Welcome everybody to our Bay Area Housing Town Hall, and today we are going to be talking about remodeling expansion and all the architectural challenges and process. We're very fortunate today that we have Kaileen and Jason to be on our call, and also my co-host Susanna Leung. I will do a little bit more introduction in a little bit, but to start off with, we always start with introducing our co-host first. So Susanna Leung, actually, some people might know that her and I have known each other since we were 6 and 5-year-old. And so we know each other forever throughout the whole lifetime. But it's more interesting is that we ended up working together now, and she is one of our company's lead buyers specialist. She has been working in the real estate industry since 2012 and has become one of the top agents in the Bay Area. And what our clients, all of the reviews about her is that they love talking to her because she always tells them these vision that they have never thought of, and she will share with them like how to reconfigure a home so that that will better fit their needs. So I'm really excited that I'm co-hosting this with Susanna Leung. And again, in our Bay Area housing market webinar, we have started this since the second week of shelter in place. And again, this is just it's a webinar that we are trying to bridge the information gap between consumers and a local real estate industry. And here is a quote, because I think like after 3+ months, a lot of people getting tired of it. I am still very much locking down, not really going out. And a lot of people feel like they want to give up. So I thought this quote, when I read it, I felt really strongly about it. It's like, never give up on something you really want. It's difficult to wait, but more difficult to regret. I think besides shelter in place, this applies to a lot of our work philosophy for anything. Sometimes it really, I just remember when I first started in this industry, I felt the same way. It's like, I just really wanted to give up, but I just have to keep going because I know that this process is going to be hard, but at the end, if I don't keep doing what I love to do or want the result that I want, then I might regret in the future. So hopefully this gives us, you guys also a thought about, I know it's tough time, but at the same time, just be patient. All right, let's talk about our housing market right now. This is like the most common questions from everybody. People always ask me this question, it's like, what do you think about the housing market? As you see here, we see that there's like a huge drop in the unemployment rate. Obviously, that's because the economy is partially reopened recently. But what's interesting is that you see that the most of the unemployment is really still lying on hotels and also government jobs. But then the professional services and especially food service and bars, they have gone up quite a bit. And we had reached the peak in about April timeframe, and then it actually quickly dropped. So we are now down to about 11% of the employment rate. And obviously we hope that it can continue to come down. And also actually a lot of these are belong to the temporary job loss. So a lot of economists actually have a very positive outlook of what's going to happen. But as we all talked about that, the market has been really, really strong, very hot right now. And a lot of people wonder why. I mean, no matter what, the employment rate still seems to be really high. We hear all this coronavirus rate is still really high, employment rate is still high. But at the same time, our mortgage rate has been very low. As you see that the mortgage rate here, the demand has spiked 33%. And I just quickly grabbed some rate from yesterday from Wells Fargo and Chase. And Wells Fargo, they have these jumbo loan, but I want to remind everybody, this doesn't apply to everyone. It depends on your FICO score, depends on your loan to value, but here's just a snapshot. For jumbo loan, Wells Fargo is offering at 3.25%, 7-year ARM, 2.625. Chase, they're offering for this is a high balance loan limit, and the rate is around 2.49 for 5-1 to about 2.99 for 30 years fixed. So if you don't know, the jumbo loan limit is actually higher than the high balance loan limit, and also there's a conforming loan limit. Different area has different numbers. So in Santa Clara County, is anything above $729,000 would be considered jumbo loan limit. All right. And now, since the rate has dropped so much, we wonder if the rate is going to come back up soon. About a month ago, Federal Reserve rate has gone down, and they had said that they likely they're going to keep the rate low until 2022. So these few agencies, they have some of their projections, and you see that from 2022 Q all the way to 2021 1Q, they are actually projecting the rate is going to come down even further. So this will be helping and boost the housing market as well. And again, this kind of shows what I was just talking about with the home prices projection through different organizations. And most of them, even throughout to 2022, they are projecting the home prices are going to continue to go up. Of course, besides the fact that home price expectation survey here, 2020, they had predicted to come down a little bit, mostly, and we saw that too, is mostly during the beginning of shelter in place that had caused their home prices to come down. But if you look at locally in our Bay Area, especially this graph, you see that the orange line represents the 2019 volume, and then the blue line represents the 2020 sold volume. And as you see, most of the time during the summertime, which is now in June, you will see that the activity actually comes down because in June, July, August, people are going out of town, they're on vacation. So activities that typically come down a little bit during the summertime. But right now, 2020 is actually going up. It's still going up. So we said that we have this late start for spring season in the housing market, and people are definitely coming out. And this is 5 counties in the Bay Area's statistics that compiled here. And here you can see that for the MLS, again, all counties, all 5 counties. And as you see that we're comparing April, May, and June, their numbers. And April, obviously, you see that there are much less new listings coming out. There are less pendings and less closed sales. Same thing for May. But then in June, we saw that there are a lot more new listings compared to 2019 in the same period of time. And then there are more transactions going on. But in terms of closed sale, we're still catching up from April and May because we were still in the middle of the shelter in place. And I thought it would be kind of cool to share this is for Santa Clara County cities, where you can see the list price over the sold price. Most of it is still above asking or slightly just 99% below the asking price. So this number really shows that how strong the market is, because I know there are people who probably thought that, oh, because of the coronavirus, I bet the housing market is coming down. But at the same time, you see that there's still actually a lot of multiple offers occurring in different areas, different cities of the Santa Clara County. And here is another graph showing list price over sales price median. And this is consists of Alameda, San Mateo, and Santa Clara counties, 3 different counties. And you see that, so you look at the one on the right versus the one on the left, and you see that the sales price is still higher. The last year, September, end of the year is a little, fourth quarter, I should say. Fourth quarter is a little lower. But most of them, besides the first 2 months of this year, everything else is pretty much at or above the list price in general. Now, knowing that we have all these, the market, a housing market especially, look at the projections, looking at the mortgage rates, everything just seems to be going really well. And just now we did a little small survey from just a few people, and we still see that a lot of people are really thinking about their home right now. So either they need to move, or they need to remodel. Susanna and I, we work with a lot of buyers. Actually, our whole team work with a lot of buyers. And we do get calls from some of our buyers saying that, oh, we need a bigger space. We need a bigger yard right now. It's okay if we move a little bit further away from our work, because now we get to work from home more. We don't have to go into office every single day. But then other people might say that I don't want to leave where I live right now, and they just want to remodel. And I thought this is really interesting is that 35% said that a new floor plan would be appealing. And what they're looking for now used to be open floor plan, right? We need to be able to see everything as you walk in, there's no separation. Now they are actually saying that they would like to have more rooms and more separation and more privacy, because it gets really tough when you're working at home. So that's why today we had, invited two very special experts to come here and talk to us about remodeling, expansion, and all these architectural challenges and process. And hopefully we can help some of you to navigate the remodeling process. So I would like to introduce our guest speakers today. So the first one, we have Kaileen Yan, and she is a studio director and a project manager for Winder Gibson Architects. She is she specializes in single family, and then sometimes I know that you do some of the commercial projects as well. And Kaileen, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me today as a guest speaker. Yeah, I think the bulk of my work is single family. We do a lot of renovation projects in San Francisco and down the peninsula, and also in Santa Clara County. And yeah, we do a bit of multifamily work as well. And I have a background in commercial projects, but my heart is in residential design. So that's kind of where I've found my home.
Great, thank you. And we also have Jason Powers. He is a senior structural engineer at ZFA, and I know that Kaileen has been working with Jason quite a bit, and he does a lot of different type of projects. And Jason, would you like to say something?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Helen. Nice to be here. Similar to Kaileen, I specialize, and my team specializes in single family residential renovations and ground ups. Also in a similar areas, a lot of work in San Francisco, but also in the peninsula and even into wine country in the North Bay. So we really love this work, and something I've been passionate about for a long time.
Awesome. I think, we're going to have we have a lot of questions prepared already. Susanna actually had done quite a few remodeling projects as well. And so I'm going to stop sharing our screen. So two of us going to be asking you guys a lot of questions. Now, I want to remind our audience too that if you guys do have questions, go ahead and put into the Q&A box underneath where you can ask your questions. And then if you have other stuff that you want to chat about, you can use the chat box. Okay. All right. So Susanna, are you ready? Susanna actually has done quite a few remodeling projects. Actually, do you want to start off with some of the remodeling projects you have done, and then maybe you already have some questions for them?
So for myself, I have done raising the ceiling. I think that's the biggest project involving architectural and structural engineers because my roof was actually really high. So I was very grateful that we can actually raise the ceiling without removing the roof. But we found out there were so many ways of you can change and how the beams go and everything. Of course, I don't understand any of those, but I'm sure that's a lot of work for you both in that case. So I guess my first question is, especially with expansion nowadays, everybody talks about adding ADU or just adding in-law unit attached or detached. Like, what would be the first thing that you recommend them to do or to start off as?
I guess I can speak to that a little bit. I think it really, I say this a lot, but it depends on where you live and sort of like the zoning and planning regulations that apply to your property. I think that's a good start, like how big of an ADU you can actually build. And if you are already maxed out on square footage, a lot of cities that now, I mean, ADUs are so popular since there have been laws that have passed that are allowing ADUs to be built. So yeah, I think the first step would be to figure out if you're allowed, what you're allowed to build and where you're allowed to build it in terms of setbacks from your property lines.
So you would recommend them to go to the city planning?
Yeah,
Plan
you
on.
can go talk to the city over the counter, or if you're really gung-ho about going forward with an ADU, which we are looking into projects that have ADUs, but also have a huge renovation at the main, like a main house renovation as well. You can speak to an architect about it, and we'll give you advice on it.
So when somebody is saying like, oh gosh, now I want to expand my home, it's either I can do remove some walls or adding walls, or do an extension. So what
Right.
would you say the first step would be? It's like, I know a lot of people say, like, oh, I should talk to a contractor first, but is it really the right steps? Talking to an architect first, a contractor first, or a structural engineer first?
I think you have to know your regulations in terms of like how big, we call it floor area ratio, and I'm sure you have similar verbiage in real estate market, but
Yep.
You need to know how much you can build on your property and your parameters, your setbacks from the property lines. And so you really need to know how big of a block you can make on your property so that you're not building something that is not permitted. Yeah. So,
And this is something that architect will be able to help them as well, because maybe some of the homeowners, like, I have no idea where to start.
yeah, it's something we do all the time at the beginning of projects, and we just, and it really depends on the jurisdiction or the local planning codes that applies to your property. So, right. But I think Jason can speak to the beam in your home though, and how
Yeah,
that
sure.
might have been difficult for you, Susanna.
Sometimes I feel like I totally agree, Kaileen. It's critical to know what planning will allow you to do, and that's really something a good architect will help guide you with. But oftentimes I'll be invited to a home with homeowners who just want to know like the possibilities and the impact of structural and what that might take. And so for interior renovations to create new spaces or open up new spaces. So I'll often walk through with clients early in the process to just give a sense of how much structural work would be impacted and required for the scope, from beams to beam changes to foundation work sometimes.
And a lot of times
kind
people
of
would,
common.
yeah, and a lot of times people would say, okay, they want to know which one is the load-bearing wall, because to them,
exactly.
First thing is, oh, I cannot move this wall. So can you guys talk a little bit about, is it true that you cannot touch the load-bearing wall?
Jason, I'll let you start with that.
Yeah, typically advisable to talk to a structural engineer before changing a load-bearing wall. Some of those meetings that it's nice to be able to meet with these clients that I mentioned is like, oh yeah, that's pretty clearly a non-bearing wall. You can go ahead and change that, and you probably don't need a structural engineer if they're looking for something more simple. So that's a more easier thing. You could just work with an architect and make floor plan changes without needing structural work in that case. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend removing a bearing wall without talking to an engineer.
Yep. And then
is it true?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, so is it true that after the drawing part, they will still need, so let's say the structural engineer has never visited the property, but architect started all the drawing. Do they still need to go get all the engineers' signature and stamps before it can get it approved, or?
Yes. The short answer is that a structural engineer say that, I guess there's a preliminary architectural design already completed. In order for permit documents to be approved, you do need to have, and I guess it depends on scope, but for the most part, if you're doing a larger renovation or new construction, you will need to have a structural drawings and stamped and in the permit documents. For a kitchen remodel, you probably wouldn't need a structural engineer involved, but if you're moving walls around and it's just best to get an engineer involved.
Absolutely. Actually, Stephen
Likewise.
Huang, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
That's okay. I was going to say, likewise, sometimes I'll get asked by owners, if we can just move these couple walls, do I really need an architect? And I almost always advise of getting an architect. Usually for permit, they'll need the plans and be able to show for permit, the building department will want to see the architectural plans as well. So really, it's a good idea to get a good architect and a good engineer that like working well together, and that will be the most expeditious and efficient way to get a permit.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure the architect and the engineer get along as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes. It's kind of a long relationship.
That's right. And Stephen Huang actually asked, what are the most important features for buyers who plan to work from home indefinitely? I guess I'll ask Kaling, do you see specific features that people are asking for these days?
I mean, I think it's interesting you brought up earlier that people are going away from open floor plans into, like, more enclosed spaces, and acoustics are important in rooms. And so just if everyone is in the same room programmatically, you'll have, like, acoustic concerns. If you're on a meeting, you don't want your baby crying in the next room or dog yapping in the next room. But I would also say, like, daylight, our office designs with huge glass windows, and natural light and ventilation is really important. And it's kind of a perk of being at home. If you work in an office building that doesn't have operable windows and now you're at home, it's good for your brain. It's good for just everything to be out. Everyone likes to be outside. So I would say natural light and ventilation, and maybe acoustics are kind of a bigger concern now.
Yeah, definitely. Great. And now I'm sure you work with a lot of clients who's like, hey, I want this, and then after you finish drawing, it's like, well, actually, never mind. I changed my mind. So how do you work with, like, clients who need to continuously redraw? I mean, there's going to be an additional cost to it too as well, right?
Yeah. And yes, we don't work with clients that don't change their mind. Totally kidding. It's totally a part of the process. It's natural. I think it's, part of being human to change your mind. And so, and needs change, and we just we evolve and guide clients along that whole process. Sometimes, especially in San Francisco, it's a long permitting process. I mean, Jason knows it well, I'm sure. So it could be years. Like, your life's 3 years ago, it will be very different than your life, like when you move into the project, for instance. And so I think changes are inevitable, and we tried to kind of navigate that situation so it's not, like, you're not going into the deep end of the pool. Like,
Yeah.
try to
And I assume every time you change something, you have to work with, like, Jason also. It's like, okay, now they want to move this wall a little bit here and there.
Yeah. So changes during the beginning of the project are a lot easier when things haven't, made it to permit. Everything is still kind of, like pen to paper, like at the drawing level, changes are easy. But if you kind of compare a change during construction, is when it gets a little trickier, and you have to work with structural engineers to see if that change is even feasible, or how to make it feasible, or get things re-permitted, which all take more time. But it's all doable. It's just usually takes a little bit more time.
So usually, how long do you think that it actually takes to draw like complete a drawing for a project? Let's say they want to remove some walls, and like a typical, I guess, a 1,500 square feet house with kitchen remodeling, some bathroom remodeling.
Yeah, I would say for permit drawings, or are you?
Yeah, permit drawings.
I would say maybe, well, and then there's coordination with structural engineers.
Mm.
I think fastest maybe about a month. I don't
Okay,
know, like,
okay.
what would you say? Like if you know that was kind of the sole project that you were working
Mm-hmm. Right.
I agree. I would also say 4 to 6 weeks, and
on.
you don't necessarily need all that time, but it allows time for the coordination and the back and forth between the architect and the structural engineer, which is really critical to the success and the permitting process. So and good for and makes the construction easier and better. So to give a little extra space there is always good for that coordination. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see.
exactly.
Yeah,
And who's that?
so this is a good time estimate of the timeline because actually recently I just had a conversation with somebody. He said his contractor told him to do an extension. It takes about 3 months. It will be done. And I was like, I don't think so. Just the drawing part is going to take a month at least. And I haven't heard anybody who can do a project extension project within 3 months.
Right. No, it's a lot more coordination than that. Yeah, and if you have well coordinated drawings, you'll have a less likeliness of change orders during construction. So it's sort of like front loading the work and making sure the contractor has a good set of instructions to build off of. Otherwise, the contractor is going to be scratching his or her head, wondering like how to detail this. And so a good set of drawings is important.
Right.
Right.
So we have like another question is that do clients also expect 3D renderings for the remodeling?
I can jump in a little bit on that. Our office, we work in Revit, which is kind of a parametric 3D program. It's not AutoCAD. AutoCAD is 2D line drawings, whereas Revit is you're basically drawing in 3D. So we typically can provide 3D and 3D sort of renderings and images, but it's usually an additional service. We can do the basic 3D for you so you can get a sense of the space. And we can do some light renderings, but if you want some market ready rendering, we usually have to like spend some more time on that. So, but yeah, I mean, typically in our office, we definitely have the 3D already because we're drawing in 3D. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. And also, do you work with, Grace asked, do you work with clients to screen contractors? Are you involved in the construction phase? Yeah, that's right. So how do you choose the people that you're working with? Obviously, you have structural engineer that you've been working with. You probably have some builders that you've been working with. So how do you help the clients to navigate like who they should hire?
Oh, definitely. We help it's called the bidding process. And we definitely have, a slew of contractors that we've already worked with. And we definitely collect our favorites throughout the years. And same with consultants, like if we like you and we just keep the relationship going, and it just makes the whole process so much easier when you know what to expect on the other end of things. And so we're always looking for new relationships with contractors, but we definitely have just a whole Rolodex full of contractors that we think will be a good fit for. It's sort of like matchmaking that we do.
Yeah. Yes.
In a way.
I think our job is the same way too for us as the realtors. A lot of times we're doing matchmaking, making sure that we keep the people who we had really good experience with already with clients, then we can introduce those to our other clients as well. So, but sometimes, of course, our clients would like to find their own contractors or other vendors. And would you help them to say, like, let me help you screen this person first?
Yeah, definitely. And we've been on all sorts of projects where the contractor is also our like the owner as well, like a developer contractor, or there's also, an owner who had a contractor that they worked with before that they loved and is now working on one of our projects currently. And so it just, the leads come from all different places. But if you're at a loss in terms of where to start with finding a general contractor, we have a whole bank of options that
Good to know.
we could figure out.
Right. And Jason, how about you? You're like, I'll just
that's
whatever.
great. No, I agree with Kaileen. I think that's a good way to meet new contractors that are good at what they do. If they've already built a good relationship and a sense of trust with a client from a previous project, then that's a good sign. You know,
Yeah.
really good sign.
And I guess like it goes back to, for example, again, that previous conversation I had, my client said that, well, no, my contractor told me it's 3 months and the price is good, the time is good. But when you talk to it, it's like, no, I don't think so. It's not possible to do that. So it is really good to reference back to other professionals to know that if the estimate that you got is actually makes sense or not.
Yeah. Yeah, you want kind of a realistic expectation and not just set yourself up for like, you know, being disappointed in the end if it's not going to work out that way. So it's always good to kind of reach out to people who do this day in and day out and know the rules, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Great. And that actually, this is kind of a follow-up question to that. It's like, so how do you decide if a contractor is qualified enough to do the work?
I would say that, you know, having experience in the you know, the project scope and locale is important, because the contractor is going to be dealing with neighbors that are complaining and, you know, city inspectors, and there's all these nuances per jurisdiction. And so having, you know, having a portfolio of work near, you know, near your property is good. And then, yeah, I think just the experience is very important. And if it were me, looking for a contract.
And ideally your architect or your engineer would already have that relationship and experience and be able to know firsthand that this contractor has the experience and knows how to do the project scope.
Yeah.
It's within their realm of expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, go back to like getting references is extremely important.
Right.
Okay. So do you also do interior design during the planning process?
Yes, we do. So we are a pretty full service firm. Aside from picking furniture, we pretty much do it all, from like, you know, getting planning approval and then to your building permit and then the bidding process. But we also do interiors at our office. We have a pretty strong background in interiors, just due to like starting in San Francisco. A lot of the projects are, they don't have very big facades because they're all up against each other. So really you're looking at a very heavy interiors renovation. And so it's kind of what we like to do. And we think it really ties, when you have one person or like one entity doing the inside and outside, it kind of ties the two together really well. And I'm not sure if I answered your question. Can you repeat?
Well, Xian Zhou, he asked, do you also do interior design during the planning process?
Yeah, well, so when we start with schematic design, we kind of design the flow of your space, and you know, it kind of all kind of gels like slowly. I guess the analogy that I always use is like you start with a big block of marble and you're chipping away at like the details of it. And so it's kind of like we come at design from all angles. And so the interior is kind of well baked into sort of the shell of the project. So that's, I mean, we don't treat it as two separate things. We treat it as like very holistic. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I guess architecture, everybody can relate about drawing, interior design, basically the drawing of the house. But I have a question for a structural engineer because that's more like a broad and deep questions. So I guess for Jason, when we talk about structural, besides beams, you mentioned also about foundations. If we found that there is some drainage problem or faulty design with a house with the foundation work, is that structural engineer that we should first go to, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, that would be a good start. Yes. Also, a geotechnical engineer can be helpful in those situations as well, because it's really the foundation design is really a collaboration between the geotech, ideally, and who study the soils beneath the house, and then give the recommendations for the foundation so that you have a foundation that's designed and calibrated to the soils of that site. And that's really important because you'll see a lot of older homes that have settlement and floors that aren't level.
Yeah.
That's because nobody ever thought about that when they were built 40 or 50 or 100 years ago. So there's a lot of renovation work and new foundation work that addresses those older issues these days. Yeah.
So if they need a repair of the foundation work, do they need to submit a drawing to the city as well from the structural engineer?
Yeah, typically, yes.
Okay.
Depending on the scope. Yeah, I would say foundation work, any foundation work would typically require a permit, if I'm understanding your question correctly. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so if the older homes, nowadays, a lot of people want this green design of their homes, right? LEED certified. Would it be harder to do for older homes?
It's always easier to include, I guess, sustainable measures in a new construction, but there are definitely ways to almost like retrofit solutions. Like solar is a huge one. I'm sure, like in the next, I don't know, 10 years, everyone's gonna have solar, but just changing all of your lights to LED, and there's even ways, and updating your plumbing fixtures to more efficient, water efficient plumbing fixtures that will help. And there's even options to capture rainwater or use gray water, which can be used to water your landscaping. And there's definitely ways that you can make your home or your existing home more sustainable without a major overhaul. So I think,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's true. I mean, I think some people just have that misconception. It's like, oh, my home is so old, I can never make it green and energy efficient. But actually, there are some small things you can do to make it more energy efficient.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in some ways, like leaky windows, it depends on your heating and ventilation system. But if you have like the new homes basically have windows that are very tightly sealed, because you have you don't want your heat and air conditioning like leaving your house. It's just a waste of energy. But I guess arguably, if you don't have air conditioning or heating and your house has leaky windows, you're actually, like getting the cooling that you need from the outside and therefore not using energy. So
Yeah.
it's all relative.
So
that actually can work pretty well in San Francisco on most days.
Yeah,
That's
it's
true.
like natural air conditioning is opening
That's
a
true.
window.
And like in Silicon Valley, we have these 100 degrees, or 110 degrees, maybe a few days during the summertime.
Too unbearable in certain, like when you're further away from the water or the bay, and you're just more inland, it's just the dry heat. You definitely need conditioned space.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's true. So how, Sajal asked, how are clients charged for remodeling? Is it cost per square foot basis?
So for a remodel project, it is typically cost per square foot. Are you talking about the actual project cost, or can you clarify what costs you're looking at?
Oh, he said designing.
Oh, designing. So we typically structure our contracts. It's more of like we sometimes do time and materials, and so the amount of time it takes for us to do the design process. But it really depends on the project, and but you know, it's usually like hourly based. The amount of time that we spend on your project, we will bill for that.
Yeah. So it usually have an initial cost, and then if you have like additional stuff, then it probably will be hourly.
Yeah, typically it's broken down like that. But in some cases, you know, we have special, you know, we work with repeat clients. It's different. It's structured differently. So it really would need to depend on it's case by case.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, and
for
then
us,
go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. For us, it depends on how well the scope is defined. If it's a project that you've already worked really closely with your architect on, and you know what you want, and we can give a pretty accurate fixed fee for the scope of work. If it's more open and it's more of a iterative design process early on to try to find the optimal systems or for that particular project, and that's more of usually an hourly thing early on until we can lock down the scope with the team.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, we work similarly. Sometimes it is a fixed fee as well, just based on how clear, again, the scope is, like how many changes we're going to make or how many iterations of designs we're going to go through before like moving a project to construction documents.
Great. And then the next question is that what are the laws regarding adding an extra floor to an existing single family home? So I guess a second story home.
So that would also be a planning related question. There are height limits that are kind of, you know, zoning and planning code dictate height limits around your property. And so you just need to know the code and what you can build up to, assuming it's not a, you know, 30-foot second floor. It's probably okay. But yeah, I think knowing the design parameters is always ideal before, you know, just starting a project.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to deal with the neighbors as well.
Yep, neighbors are huge, a huge thing in San Francisco especially, but in, you know, we work in like Los Altos and Hillsborough, and it's a concern everywhere because everyone is doesn't want to be shadowed by you know, big buildings and, you know, views. People are concerned about views.
Yeah.
So it just needs to be agreed upon.
Yeah.
Neighbors.
And even sometimes like neighbors might say like, hey, you building a second story, I feel like my privacy is being invaded right now. So
right. Yeah, we work with neighbors a lot. Yeah, and just trying to figure out a common ground and what is allowable or what they would find to be okay, you know.
So I have a question. When you are designing on, you know, building additional things or remodeling, would you also, you may not know the exact cost of the project, but will you suggest them or tell them, okay, this way it may cost more to do it this way, or it might cost less to do it this way?
Yeah, we actually do that quite a bit.
But would that leave you a lot of uncertainties as well while doing the drawing?
Yeah, so for instance, renovation projects in the city, we do a lot of it just because San Francisco does want you to retain they would rather they make it a little bit easier to do a renovation project, but and so even though it's a renovation, it could be a complete gut job and basically new. But in essence, like a renovation project is somewhat more difficult, and I'm sure Jason, you probably find that that's the case too, because you're working with existing studs and you're going to have to scissor some existing joists, and it just makes it pretty tricky in terms of construction. Like I when I see the contractors building these renovation projects, I'm just like, oh, that's really difficult. That would have been a lot easier if it was a brand new project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just so that, I guess, sometimes sways renovation to a little bit more costly. It really depends on the scenario again, but it is sometimes more work to renovate, like if you're going to do a huge renovation.
Yeah.
And does it depends also, like in terms of the square footage, like if you want to do extension, sometimes if you build it ground up versus that you're just extending from the existing house?
Yeah, so I well, I guess if you, it is savings if you're going to use existing parts of the existing foundation. And so like it depends on your budget and all of that, but yeah, I think most of the time renovation, if you're just extending in the back and not touching, not redoing all of the exterior walls and still calling it a renovation, most of the time renovation is going to be more, there's going to be more savings.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Sajal asks, most of the homes here in the Bay Area have HOA, which in most cases does not allow exterior interior remodeling. How do we deal with that? I think that would be probably questions to HOA. You have to ask the HOA what you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
It's like,
I know what I guess I know what you're talking about. There are a lot of like local covenants, like things that are very restrictive on paint colors even. And so I would think that if you're getting frustrated with the regulations and you really want to do a project, it might be best to find a property that doesn't have those regulations. I'm not sure what you'd have to ask your HOA on interior renovations.
right.
Even interior renovations on HOAs can be challenging, particularly from a structural point of view, because we've had a number of clients come to us who are, like, say, on an upper floor flat or upper condo, and they want to do a pretty big renovation that triggers structural work. It's difficult because now you have to complete, by the laws of gravity, you have to complete these load paths down to the foundation, and if that means going through a neighbor's unit, that becomes a whole nother set of problems to address. And so I agree with Kaileen. There's limitations. There's a lot of limitations to what you can likely do in those situations,
Definitely.
both architecturally and structurally.
Actually, that is one of our questions to our clients. Like if they are really wanting to do a lot more, structural remodeling, like, probably not a good idea to go with a condo if you want to do, like, express your creativity.
Yeah.
We still have 3 more questions here. Why do most houses have sloping roofs here in Bay Area? And why not the contemporary style flat roofs? Is it related to the climate here?
That's a good question. Yes, it's usually related to the climate, but the sloping, I think it depends on the houses you're referring to. Like the tract homes from like the 50s tend to have a low, like maybe like a hip roof. And all of that is, good for drainage, whereas a flat roof, water can pool a little bit more. So I think the reason why a lot of the houses were built with sloped roofs was to kind of deal with drainage issues and so climate related.
Yeah. Definitely. And no matter which part of the country, typically, with sloping roof would be helping with snow, with rain, with everything. And
Yeah.
here we're considering don't rain as much.
Yeah.
And now that you mentioned about the roof, so if for people who actually would like to build the flat roof to a slope roof so they can put composite shingles on there, does that actually related to also the structural like of the foundation? Do you have to look at it to see can it support actually a slope roof? Because I
Yes.
think flat roof would be more light.
Yes. I mean, the best would be to, call Jason. Call
And,
Jason.
and typical, how long is that kind of project if they want to build a slope roof to a flat roof? I mean, sorry, a flat roof versus
Sloped
roof.
roof. So again,
How long such a project would take, like involving drawing, permit and building out?
yeah. Well, so again, we're looking at, you need to always go back to that planning document and know, if, sometimes a lot of cities have design guidelines too. So
Right.
they don't want you to make like a ski chalet,
Mm.
in the house, in the neighborhood. They want you to design something that kind of fits contextually. And so planning, you'll probably need planning approval because it's a big change to the exterior.
Yeah.
So that kind of always tacks on some more time than just going straight for a building permit. So I would say maybe like 6 months.
Oh, it's still 6 months. Wow.
Whoa, not a small project.
Yeah, I would think
That's the
maybe after 3 months.
fastest. Like it really depends on your
Ooh.
jurisdiction, like your building and planning department, and how fast they are like processing
Right.
information. But
Okay.
on our end, like Jason and my end, like we can do these drawings pretty fast, but then once it leaves our offices is when it like gets hung up, and
Yeah.
neighbors need to review it, in which case
Oh, okay.
this project where you go from flat to pitched, you probably need neighbor review as well. So all of this, maybe 6 months to a year.
Wow. So it's just as much as you need for doing expansion of 400 square feet to your home.
Yeah. And, anything that affects the front facade usually is the cities really want to see what you're doing. I mean, the back also, but the front facade is they want to make sure it fits within the neighborhood.
Got it. Cool.
The planning is always the hardest and the longest part of the process. So if you trigger things that require planning, then you're sort of in for a long haul. But as far as like when you get past that, like redesigning a roof from a flat to pitched roof is fairly simple and most likely wouldn't require foundation upgrades to answer your question. That would be pretty unusual. Now adding a floor, like there was a couple questions ago about adding a whole floor. That's a bigger structural impact. That would probably that most often does require foundation upgrades and strengthening.
Wow. And actually I heard like some of the planning department, they start using even drone to do inspection. Have you guys experienced that?
Not yet, but I'm sure with a lot of
video inspection.
Video with all the coronavirus.
Yeah.
The climate now, I wouldn't put that seems totally like what they would do.
Great. So we don't have a lot of time, but there are still a few questions. A follow on the interior design questions. When you make a remodeling plan, does it include the materials to be used, or is it up to the clients and contractors? Probably,
I think I was tile and stone shopping this morning, and we do, go with our clients to go, pick the finishes. And, we'll definitely guide you so that, the house again looks cohesive and has like a story, not a little bit haphazard everywhere. And so we guide you through all of the finish selections. And lighting and plumbing and all of that, everything that attaches to your building.
Awesome. It's like one-stop shop.
Full service.
And then one, and he so y'all asked also, why is construction here mostly wooden? Not why not RCC?
RCC, is that metal?
I'm not sure. What is RCC?
RCC, that resilient channel? I don't know.
Reinforced concrete,
Reinforced cement.
Oh, reinforced concrete.
maybe?
Yeah, I think it might be climate driven again, and wood actually performs really well seismically, and we have a lot of earthquakes here. And it depends on how many, like if you're talking about a single family home up to 4 stories, wood, you know, Jason can speak to it. Wood performs really well.
Wood, the light frame wood homes do perform well in seismic country, exactly. I think it might come down to cost. I mean, concrete can be designed to perform very well in seismic country, but it's more expensive. So I think the most cost efficient way to build a home or renovate a home is wood, typically, unless somebody's looking for something unique, like quite unique and different. Yeah.
Or more noise insulation, then you'll go with RCC.
Yeah. Right.
Great. Last question is, how much time does it take to build a single family home from start to finish?
Ooh, that's a good
question.
Right?
And
At least a year.
Depends on where.
Anywhere from a year to 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
San Francisco is 3 years.
Holy.
I mean, San Francisco is about 2 to 3 years, I think. And then if you San Jose, I think maybe a year and a half, or year and a half would be a good, healthy estimate. Not too fast, but it, you know, like I said before, it really depends on the hang-ups outside, in planning and then building and neighbors. Planning is usually the hardest to get through.
Do you have these pre-made standard templates? Like, here are a few ones you can choose, they're approved, so you can go faster.
Prefabricated homes?
Not the home, but just the drawing.
No, we haven't really done much of that. We're kind of more on the custom, custom homes are a little bit more of our wheelhouse. So yeah.
Okay. I guess to tie into the last question, so y'all want to know, what is the budget for constructing a 1,500 square feet home? Would you say, a lot of people always it's about 300, 350. It all depends on if it's a flat lot, if it's on the hillside, correct?
Yeah, that and your finish level. Are you looking at, base, no base, all the fine grained details, what you're putting into a project. But typically, I mean, the homes that we design, which tend to be a little bit more modern, we're seeing around 400.
Yeah.
And so, and it's not that, we're designing with gold or, silver or anything like that, but it is the labor costs in this area. It's just more.
Permits cost a lot too.
And permits, and then design fees, and it just kind of adds up.
Well, thank you so much today for answering so many questions. I think this is I'm so glad we got you, the architect and the structural engineer, really cover both sides of it, because honestly, if you want to do remodeling, it's not dealing just one kind of vendor. You need to deal with different vendors and making sure that they work cohesively so that your project will come out smoothly and less stressful, because no matter what, remodeling is a very stressful project. But again, thank you so much. And if Kaileen and Jason, if you don't mind to share your contact information, maybe you can share that on the chat box. Type in your email address or phone number if you want, so that if anyone has any further questions, they can contact you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
you.
till then, next time we're gonna be doing our next Bay Area housing market town hall is gonna be in 2 weeks. So if you guys have any other topics that you guys want us to put together, please do email us. And until then, hopefully that everybody stays safe and well. Bye.
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 Bye.